I will call this meeting back to a workshop meeting. And at this point, I think it was the opportunity for our HR director to go through the process, the description, the whatever, wherever we want to go from here. And I think it's time for your presentation.
Good afternoon. So at last week's board meeting, I was asked to come back to this meeting with 4 things. The research on qualifications and eligibility for the county administrator position, information on the salary study throughout the state, the criteria for the task force, and a sample advertisement for the position. I left you all a copy, I emailed you a copy and left you a hard copy of that advertisement. So I have these 4 items, and then I also have a process that is based on the resolution that was passed last week, and to flesh out. So starting with qualifications and eligibility, there are, based on conversation from last week, there are a couple conversation points, starting with what, if any, qualifications and eligibility we'd like to see for this position. Option A is none. Option B is using the education and experience that we used from 2014, which is the language below. And option C is developing new criteria. And if we choose option C, then the next 4 slides go over how we can create that and some of the questions to discuss. If we choose to...
Commissioner Sachs, can we wait till the end of the presentation?
I just have a question with regard to this. I could wait to the very end, or I could ask Dr. Khan right now, answer it. Just a question. It's up to you, Mayor.
Go right ahead.
I know we don't.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
If it's
No,
quick.
the question is this. No, I don't know if it's quick. Why did we put something out in 2014?
That was recruiting for the position that Ms. Baker
Okay.
was hired for.
And I'll wait to the other question.
Thank you.
If the decision is made to create new criteria, it starts with education, whether or not we require a college degree. If so, do we require a bachelor's or a master's? What type of equivalency do we offer? And what coursework would be relevant? Or would we have, is it just having a degree, or does it need to be in something specific? In the research throughout the state and from our 2014 posting, it's typical to have a degree in business or public administration or a relevant or a related major. For experience, is prior experience required? What we've seen throughout the state is 5, 7, 10, 15 years of progressively responsible experience, and that is a phrase that is commonly used. I'm sorry, and on the last 3 postings for an assistant county administrator, we required 7 years. Also for experience, how much of that at a senior management level? And is experience working in local government a requirement? For the salary study, based on comparable counties, and those counties are listed at the bottom of that slide, we found a range of 341 to 477, the average being 402, and just for perspective, the current salary is 463. The third item I was asked to come back with was the advertisement, which you have a copy of. And the fourth item was sample criteria for task force members in the event that we would need a task force. The criteria that we have here is consistent with people appointed to a board or committee. So they would fill out an application. That application includes disclosing any contractual relationships with the county, requiring individuals to complete training on the Code of Ethics, which would include the sunshine laws, prohibited conduct, and the ethics training, and emphasizing that members must be a Palm Beach County resident. One additional item that I added was anyone serving on the task force will not be considered for the administrator position. So in this section, this is using the dates and the items from the resolution and building those out with a couple decision points to make. Starting with from March 27th, which is today, through the 31st, Monday. Once the board has approved and finalized the eligibility, salary range, and advertisement, where would you like this position to be posted? If we just did the job board, that would be up today. Option B is local, which we discussed last week, and many of you said Florida. So these are three of the larger Florida associations where we could post. Option C is to go national. These applications would have a deadline of March 31st at 11:59 p.m. And on the morning of the 1st, at the meeting, I would finish verifying the list of eligible applicants based on the eligibility that's decided by the board. And I would bring them, the mayor would then announce the number of eligible candidates who have submitted their resume. Based on the number of applicants, eligible applicants, if there are up to 5, we would skip ahead to the second round. If there are more than 5, we go to the first round, which is the task force. On April 1st, with more than 5 applicants, a task force is created by the board in that meeting, and the board would determine the members of that task force. Each board member nominates one task force member who fits the established criteria based on what we already discussed. And my suggestion was that an alternate also be nominated in the event that that first task member is not available. Otherwise, we would have to wait to the next board meeting to nominate more people, and that would elongate the process. Between April 2nd and April 21st, we would be going through the first round with the task force. Background checks would be conducted on all eligible applicants. With a larger pool, there may be a need to narrow down that pool before the task force is conducting interviews. But there are 2 options. One is that the task force interviews all eligible applicants. The other is that the task force reviews the resumes of all eligible applicants. Just for history, in the last recruitment, the task force reviewed the resumes of all eligible applicants and narrowed it down from there. They went through 81 resumes. And that took them approximately 5 to 6 months. 5 to 6 months. They met once a month, and they did not meet in December, so that's, yes. If the decision is made to review resumes, once they've completed the ethics training, I would then give them all the resumes to review. There would be a public meetings, depending on how many applicants, to review those resumes and decide who would move forward. And then the task force recommendation, I would collect the recommendations, and the candidate pool would be narrowed to 6 to 10 people. At the April 22nd public meeting, the task force would interview those 6 to 10 candidates. Per the resolution, each interview would last 20 minutes. The first 2 minutes would be the opening comments from each candidate. The last 2 minutes would be their closing remarks, so approximately 16 minutes worth of questions from the task force. At the conclusion of that meeting, I would get the scores from the task force members and the top 5 would be recommended to the board at the next meeting. Just for one point, to create the interview questions for the task force, I would be reaching out to the task force members, collecting their interview questions, and putting together the final list. With 16 minutes of interviews, you're probably not going to get more than 3 to 4 questions. Finally, to conclude the first round, the task force recommendations are presented to the board at the April 24th meeting, and the board can choose to accept those recommendations or nominate additional candidates. The board then finalizes the list of finalists, and we go to the second round, which is the one-on-one interviews with commissioners. Each of these interviews, we would need to determine the length of these interviews. I would work with each of you to finalize questions. Every candidate would need to be asked the same questions by a commissioner, but that doesn't mean commissioners have to ask the same questions. So each of you would have your own list of questions, and we would need to be consistent on what people are asked. And in those interviews, it would be either myself or someone from the county attorney's office or some other party. Finally, on April 30th, at a special meeting, the board interviews the finalists, up to 5 people, and the majority vote would remove and selects the candidate with the majority vote. We would need to discuss how that voting takes place. And then finally, just to show what the calendar looks like based on all the dates that we've discussed from the resolution. You can see I won't repeat it because we just went through all the dates, but this is what it looks like in a summary form. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lot to digest. It's a short period of time to do an awesome search. I don't see any lights on. I'm sure folks want to weigh in on this. If no one's going to weigh in, I'll go first. Oh, I guess I'm going first. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Mr. Khan, on your slide number 9, on your salary survey, do you have any data on the length of time in position? I think that's really important to understand when we're trying to understand salaries, because there's a large range, and
I do not, but I can get that information for you.
I think it would be important to understand, where these people are in their position, if they've been there for 10 years versus somebody who's been there for 2. So I think if we can get it stratified, that probably rather than just a range, I think that would be beneficial.
Commissioner Weiss, any other questions?
I don't have
Or
any other
comments?
questions. I actually prepared my own
Go right ahead.
qualifications. If I can, I will go ahead and review those. So what I've identified is some key responsibilities to start. So policy implementation, transport the board's goals into actionable strategies, ensuring alignment across all departments. Operational leadership, oversee all county departments and agencies providing guidance on resource allocation, service delivery, and process improvement. Financial stewardship, develop and manage the annual county budget, including long-term financial planning to maintain fiscal responsibility and transparency. Stakeholder engagement, collaborate with community organizations, residents, elected officials, and local and state federal agencies to address the needs and advance county priorities. Organizational effectiveness, promote a culture of excellence, innovation, and accountability through effective performance management and continuous improvement initiatives. Regulatory compliance, ensure county operations comply with all federal, state, and local regulations. Strategic planning, lead short and long-term planning efforts that support the county's economic, social, and environmental objectives. My minimum qualifications was a bachelor's degree in public administration, business administration, or a closely related field. Experience, at least 10 years of progressively responsible management experience in government or a similarly complex organization, including 5 years in senior leadership role. Skills, strong knowledge of budgeting, financial management, and organizational leadership. Excellent interpersonal communication, negotiation, and presentation abilities. Demonstrated success in strategic planning, project management, and operational oversight. Proficiency in data-driven decision-making and outcome-based performance measurement. The desired leadership competencies and traits I am looking for are strategic vision, ability to anticipate emerging challenges and opportunities, set clear priorities, and foster innovative solutions. Ethical leadership, commitment to integrity, transparency, and accountability in all decision-making processes. Collaboration and team building, skilled at uniting diverse stakeholders around common goals and cultivating a high-performing workforce. Resilience and adaptability, comfortable operating in a fast-paced environment with evolving demands, using sound judgment to adapt to change. Community focus, dedicated to equity, inclusivity, and delivering services that meet the unique needs of urban, suburban, and rural communities. And then my preferred qualifications, master's degree in public administration, business administration, or related field. A credential manager designation through the International City-County Management Association. Specialized certifications related to public finance, human resources, or emergency management. Familiarity with Florida statutes, regulations, and local government best practices. So.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we have a number of options that you've laid out that we need to choose from. After seeing this under, the reality of what was passed last week, I think before we move forward to further discussion, I'd like to know from the entire board, is everyone still wanting to move forward with the schedule as presented? And then if that is the will of the board, then I think we need to start discussing the numerous pages of options. So could that be something we could address?
Absolutely.
First.
Absolutely. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And what a great question, Commissioner Woodward. One of the things that was brought up last week when we closed out the meeting was the idea that it was a very aggressive timeline. We talked about March 27th through the 31st. Commissioner Flores did indicate that April 8th would have been a better date. That was lost in translation during the final resolution vote. There's definitely an opportunity, an option that I believe that we should, and this was discussed in the meeting on March the 18th. However, it was also not translated into the vote, was having the opportunity to work with staff to look at those dates. I believe that with my conversation with staff, including Attorney David Oddie, Mr. Khan, and Assistant County Manager Duran, that this resolution would still have to also go before legal to make sure that it passes legal muster. In addition, on March the 18th, when we were closing out the meeting, County Administrator Virginia Baker indicated that HR and legal would definitely be involved. So it would be the pleasure of the body, if we were to revise or amend the resolution as passed, to look at the dates and work with staff, because I believe that staff has the professional expertise to have the flexibility to work within those dates. Now, I do know that I had the opportunity, once I looked at Mr. Khan's presentation of the PowerPoint, to really look at these dates, and I have built out a new program with those dates involved and included, and we can discuss those as we go through the process, but it allows for April 8th to be the date to take that applications, but we also have an opportunity to even extend that date a little bit further based on what the board and the body would like to see. So we've got the opportunity here. I built it out in terms of changing the dates and moving it around, providing additional timeframes, and then really working with staff to provide the flexibility. We've got probably the best staff in the world, if not the world, definitely the state, to be able to work on this. I've had numerous conversations with them this week, and I'm more than confident that if we allow staff the flexibility to build out these dates, we'll come up with a plan and a program that works for all of us.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, and I appreciate hearing from my colleagues about wanting to have flexibility in the time. I think that would be an excellent thing to do. I'd also like to suggest that we also include time for public participation. I think it's very important that we are doing this on behalf of the people of the county and that they have a seat at this table. So I would ask that with the extension of this, that we include public opportunity for the public to interact with these candidates and hear from them and have an opportunity to ask and present their priorities, just so that the candidates know what our community is prioritizing, because we're doing this on behalf of the people, this is for the people, and I really think it's important that the people are part of the process. And I thought that was one of the areas that was, because of the compressed timeline, and I'm sure you all agree, how important it is to include the people in the community. So with a relaxation of timelines, I think it provides an opportunity for the people to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Flores, you had your light on, you turned it off? No? Okay. Thank you. I was doing a little bit of research, and just one of the searches that I was involved in was the executive director of the Regional Transit Authority, better known as Tri-Rail. And they actually had a timeline that went from March to August. They hired a search firm in March 25th. By our June meeting, they had made an offer, and then David Deck took the job in August. And the reason I'm saying it is because if we do whether we do stick to a state search or a national search, we want to be able to give that person the opportunity to resign gracefully from the post that they're in and not leave that community in the lurch if they so choose to leave. And so when the offer was made to Mr. Deck in June, he gave 60 days notice so that the firm that he was leaving had 60 days notice to replace him. I appreciate the board's willingness to take up the date and times on this. I think for the betterment of our community, this is not something that needs to be rushed, but also I realize with our administrator leaving May 31st, maybe she could be convinced to stay a little longer if need be because of the search. That might be an opportunity, but I think we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our 1.5 million taxpayers to do this right. We are a community in great standing. We are a AAA rated community. Again, we have a very large budget. We have a large staff. We will be very hard pressed to find somebody that has had the same exact qualifications. But if you look at the Pinellas County I should say administrator, he actually came from Lake County before he went to Pinellas County. So it was an in-state hire. I did not do the research as to whether it was a national search. However, what I'd like to do is make sure that we give ourselves enough time to do the correct amount of search. Just putting it on a board is not what I would say would be the correct search. We do need to have the assistance of a firm And I believe we have an HR, we have a search firm on staff, and with the, other agencies that we have here in the state and their message boards, I think we can do the appropriate search, but I would really like to expand our timeline at least a month. But those are my thoughts, and there's a lot of other people who want to speak, even though their lights aren't on, but I will encourage them. Commissioner Powell, your light is back on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And with regard to your comments, I agree with you. One of the things I don't want to miss out on in terms of the flexibility that is built into the program is it's still an expedited time frame, right? And the process would still be inclusive of doing a process where we would search first here locally and nationally, statewide. It doesn't bar anybody from applying, but we do have the flexibility to work on these times. For example, if you look at the previous time frame that I gave you, the applications would be due on or before April the 8th. Now we move forward. Previously, that was on or before, March the 31st. The next meeting said at the April 1st BCC regular Tuesday meeting, the mayor announces the candidates who have submitted their letter. Now, what I built in would say at the April 22nd BCC Workshop. So that gives us time after April the 8th. If we want to extend that deadline, it gives us much more time. I know we talked about 2 weeks would be the minimum, but it gives us much more of an opportunity to go further than that. And if necessary, the opportunity to be flexible with staff to really expedite those timeframes. In terms of Commissioner Weiss, with the conversation and the very well thought out idea that the public should be involved, and I believe that. And we can also add in special meetings. However, if you look at the timeframes that I provide in the updated process, April 22nd is a BCC workshop. We also have on here, if we do option one, less than 5 candidates, then we would interview privately. Each candidate publicly would have the interview at the May 20th BCC workshop. That's in public in front of everybody. So one of the things that I've done and built out in the program has really been based on the idea of dates that we already have in public meetings. I did not build into this new program any special meetings or the addition of any specific public meetings for the public. However, Commissioner Weiss, with your well thought out idea, I think that would be something that, based on a time frame, we could definitely do. Now, with both times, I even included, after discussions with our staff, the idea that if someone is hired from a different agency, they would need time to allow that entity or agency to let them know that, hey, they're leaving and they're coming to Palm Beach County to be the county administrator. So during that time, in this new proposal or this new flexible time frame, it allows for the interim to operate until we have a new county administrator in place. Now, it is still by no means a rushed process because it has the flexibility with new time frames, but it still does kind of look at the idea that we have to replace our county administrator expeditiously without really having a whole lot of overlap. I know that previously in one of our meetings, one of the commissioners indicated that we could have an interim for up to a year. The thought process behind that is, truthfully, if we have an interim for up to a year, if someone is running the county as an interim up to a year, we should probably just keep that person if they're running it for a year without moving forward. In the past, what we've seen here in Palm Beach County is the county administrator has come from inside. So this still gives us the opportunity to look far and wide. It expedites the process. And even in this program, in this process, if it doesn't work, where we as a board can't decide on someone who gets the most votes, then we still have the opportunity to go to a national search. And after conversations with our team yesterday, I do understand that we have the University of Virginia that's already contracted with us, and they have over 300 search firms, or they have over 100 firms, which would cost us about $300,000. So if we go through the process and we cannot determine expedited how we could move forward, then I believe we should definitely engage. Thank you.
Commissioner Woodward.
He wanted-
I'm sorry, oh,
Sorry, just to clarify, University of Virginia has a list of recruiting firms, over 100 that we could choose from. That would be an expedited process. It would not necessarily cost $300,000. It would depend on which firm we chose.
Just can't go over.
We can't go over $300,000. Typically, these recruitings do not cost $300,000.
and typically with recruiting, if we hire a recruiting company, as with Mr. Deck, the recruiting company called him even though he wasn't in the market, because they said, well, this is somebody who fits the bill, so let me call. 'Cause, oftentimes when a recruiting company is doing their job, they're calling people who fit the bill who may not necessarily have thought they want to be in Florida. So that would be one of the reasons why I think having a search firm as part of the process would be good, because some people may not know that they're interested until someone actually calls them and says, are you interested? Here are the qualifications, and here's what the job entails. So I think having a search firm as part of the process would behoove us. Commissioner Woodward, your light was on, and then Vice Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. If it's okay, I'd like to just go back a little to what was passed last week. Commissioner Powell, you gave us the pages, the resolution, I guess is what we're calling it, that was passed last week. And then we have this PowerPoint presentation that delivers on that resolution. And if we're going to start discussing, timelines, we're going to start discussing, other parts of this with Commissioner Weiss's request to have public input, are we then rescinding this and starting over? Or are we treating this as a bill to be amended?
I like that. You said, well, it's already been passed, but we would amend what we've already passed. This would not be, in my opinion, starting from scratch, and the things that you've indicated already in the process. As Commissioner or Mayor Marino indicated, keeping a search firm as a part of the process, that's built into the program. If you look at it, it says clearly, if no candidate receives a majority of the vote, then the BCC shall hire a company, which of course would be a search firm, to conduct a national search and appoint an interim county administrator until such time that the BCC identifies a permanent county administrator. So that portion is really already built into the program. So it would not be my recommendation to scrap completely what we have. It would be my recommendation to move forward with the flexibility to look at timelines with staff, to allow staff that opportunity to have the flexibility to even look at these new timelines that I've given them. And if they don't work, we can work with staff to adjust them as necessary so that we keep the process flowing. But please keep in mind that this is not what I've heard is a local search. I've heard a lot of things, plays on language and linguistics that are not completely accurate, right? Because this is not just local. Anyone who's interested can apply, but we have the ability to work on timelines. These are things that I discussed at the March 18th meeting. Unfortunately, when the resolution was passed, it did not include that. Taking into account the fact that the county administrator did say that HR and legal would need to be a part of the conversation. So it's just it would be my pleasure to move forward with an amended version with new timelines, but allowing staff that flexibility. I talked to Mr. Oddie, Attorney Oddie, and he did indicate that legal would need to look at this to make sure it passes legal muster. And we should give them that opportunity with the new timelines to make sure that they work. And if there needs to be additional flexibility built in that, I think we can add a condition that says if there needs to be additional flexibility, we do that, barring all of the things that were presented in the PowerPoint today.
Well, I very much appreciate the ability to have more flexibility and time to work with staff. My one concern and is, I understand you've had a number of conversations with staff. I've had different conversations with staff, and most of my conversations this week have had to be in relation to the resolution that was passed and how we can deliver on this. But we must discuss this as a board. If we're going to make amendments, then whatever discussions are had with staff have to be had with all of us, or else we're not acting as a board. So if there have been discussions and things that you can tell us in your discussions, then please share them with us. But I don't appreciate, and I can't come up with a better word right now, being left out of the ability to have the same discussions with staff, because I was operating under the understanding that this resolution was passed and this is what we were doing, and maybe there was some flexibility for April 8th was the one discussion, and then the discussion was ended and a vote was taken. So if a commissioner is having discussions with staff on how to amend this, all of us should have the same ability to have the same discussion. And if this is how we're moving forward at this point today, I'm feeling very much the way I feel when I left last week's meeting, that I've become irrelevant in the process. And I don't want to feel that way, and I don't want District 4 to feel that we are not represented. So if we are starting fresh and have the ability to make amendments here moving forward, I'm happy to participate in that. But I also would appreciate the same ability to have possibilities. What can we do? What should we do? What are the other things? Because I was very good in my meeting with staff to stick with the resolution that was passed. And if there's other commissioners having different conversations, I would like the ability to have the time to do the same.
Thank you. Mayor, and let me be clear. One, I'm not throwing staff under the bus because they have not seen these dates that I have. And the conversation that you may have had with staff were similar to the conversations I had. I did not present anything to staff that I didn't present to you. They are giving you the information based on what we've already had. What I'm talking about is we're here in the board meeting right now, right? And what I'm discussing is new dates based on the presentation that I saw on the PowerPoint, the final PowerPoint that I saw by Mr. Khan yesterday that came to our emails about 4:38. I started trying to see if we can elongate some of the time frames. So that's why we're here today. It's not to make you, first of all, let me just say this. As a commissioner on this board, whether you are the mayor or a commissioner of your district just like me, you will never be irrelevant. You are a commissioner. That's first and foremost. Your voice carries reason, you're relevant, and you're important, as are all of us. So don't think that I've had individual conversations with staff that I haven't not had with the board. The reason that the staff has not presented to you what I'm talking about is because I was coming from the presentation that I did, the resolution or the information that I gave staff that we talked about and passed. And how do we make it work? That's why we're here as a board. Now, if it's your pleasure to start from scratch, that would not be my pleasure. But if it's your pleasure to use what we have and to build in some flexibility and to work within those confines to make sure that we have an expedited process that includes all of us, then that would be my goal. Now, my goal is never to make any other commissioner feel irrelevant or if they're not a part of the process, nor is it my goal ever to make it seem like I'm throwing staff under the bus, because that is not my intent. I've had really great conversations with staff who have given me good advice in terms of what we have, and what Mr. Khan presented to you today is what I saw. And that final presentation that we saw that came to our inboxes yesterday after 4:30 is what I used to elongate what I have in front of us. In our March 18th meeting, I specifically stated and asked that we give staff that opportunity to have flexibility. We also know that the county administrator indicated that staff and HR would work on this. We also had the opportunity and we had conversations with regard to April the 8th. However, unfortunately, when the resolution was passed, those things were not picked up. We did not change that. The meeting kind of ended abruptly in a in an unusual manner. It was different. However, we're here to work together. We are a team. Whether we agree on everything or not, we're going to be a team. And when we leave this dais today, I'll be here till tomorrow at the minimum, and at the maximum, I'll be here 4 years and maybe even 8. But at no time am I here to work against my colleagues. Together, we'll get this done.
May I respond, Mayor?
Sure.
If that is the case, I'm happy to sit here today and work through this. I believe we have the dates definitely to discuss. We still have the options that have been presented to us for the qualifications that we need to discuss. And importantly, get to the job posting that we will need to be posting as soon as end of today. There's a number of options through this that we have to get through. And as far as the order of things, I don't know if we should go dates first and then work our way, but I am happy to participate with you in this way, and we can get through this, and then answer all of these questions so that when we move forward, we can explain to the public what we've done and what is happening.
Absolutely. And if it would be your pleasure, we can move with dates first, with the idea that once we do look at these dates, we still allow staff that flexibility to look and say, hey, maybe we should add in a public meeting here, and with the condition that staff can do that. I think it's very important that as we look at this process, before we kind of get into the meat and bones of the logistics of how this works, we probably should make the decision ultimately on qualifications. I heard Commissioner Weiss present what he believes should be the qualifications. And I have before me what Commissioner Weiss had previously presented to us, which is a little bit different, but I think that we should really start. It's just my opinion. It's up to the mayor. She's the boss. To have the conversation with regard to qualifications, or actually, we're a team, we're the body, whatever your pleasure is.
Well, we got a couple more lights on. I do believe that, our charge today is, what are the qualifications? There are questions about the timeline, and so I believe our commissioners should have the opportunity to weigh in. And with that, Vice Mayor Baxter, your light was on next.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things I want to touch on. I do support what we had discussed at the previous board meeting, and that was changing the April 1st date to April 8th. It was unfortunate that that didn't seem to get recorded properly, but I think we can correct that today. I did want to ask a couple questions, and it feels like a lifetime ago because we've had some great discussions, but how much would it cost the county to, let's say we go through this whole process and 4 of us don't decide, what does it cost on average to hire a firm to search for a new administrator?
Depending on the firm, they typically go with a percentage of whatever that starting salary is going to be.
So our current administrator says makes $463,000. What would a percentage of that? What percentage of that?
It depends on the firm. Some, I've seen 20%, I've seen 25% for a national search.
So we're talking over $100,000.
Correct.
Do we know how many times a national search has been done, and then we end up going local anyways within the county of municipalities, the cities, other counties throughout the state?
No.
And I believe we did a national search when Ms. Baker was hired.
Yes.
Is that true? And did we spend that money when she was hired?
I don't have those figures.
I mean, if we did a national search and hired a firm?
We did hire a firm, but I don't have the figures on what was the cost.
Again, I guess it would have been a percentage.
Typically.
Okay. As far as being flexible with adding some dates in to the process, I'm good with that. If we need to add some dates to what we approved at the last meeting, I think, you know, if that makes everyone more comfortable, I'm on board with that flexibility. As far as minimum requirements, we did discuss, you know, setting those in place today. I did have some questions, and it said, I believe, and please correct me, I know I'm rounding here, over 30 years, we've only gone through this process a couple times? Twice, roughly. So, and our previous county administrator, I've heard amazing things about. What capacity did he serve prior to being a county administrator? Deputy county?
He was a deputy.
And then prior to that?
Prior administrator, or the prior, where his
His
prior.
prior position?
Water utility, yes.
Would you like me to answer that? Mr. Weissman served as a county administrator going back. He served as an assistant county administrator. And then prior to that, he was the water utilities director.
So when this board hired him, or the previous board hired him, he actually worked as the director for the water utilities?
When I met him coming on board, he was the water utilities director.
And was he a assistant administrator for this county?
Yes.
Did he have a master's degree?
He was an engineer. I don't believe he had a
He had a
master's.
bachelor's.
He was
Master's degree, okay.
but he was a PE.
That's it for now, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask, if it's possible, maybe you could, Commissioner Powell, maybe you could have your staff produce the new timeline, bring it down. So I'd like to see it in writing. It would be it would be helpful to me to be able to see it in writing, see what the dates we're looking at. I'm also and my question is really about, when we talk about flexibility for staff, what does that mean? And I guess I have to direct it to you since you're the one who brought it up.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss. What that would mean is, when I talk about flexibility in terms of dates,
Yes, sir.
as staff looks at these dates that we provided, like they would have looked at the previous dates, if they determine that March 27th to March 31st is such a tight time frame that it doesn't work for the job posting, then they would be able to say, well, you know what, let's move that. However, I have here April the 8th. With regard to my staff bringing this, I could actually email it to you, because I have my computer here right now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you want to email it to me, that
Or I could hand you what I'm looking at. But either way, I could get it to you.
it'd be
It's
just
not a
be easier
problem.
for me to see it in writing, and I would probably think my colleagues might appreciate it as well.
That'd be perfect. No, absolutely.
Thank you.
I can get it to you.
And I guess this question is probably going to have to fall to you, well, probably to you, Administrator Baker. Just curious, when Mr. Weissman was selected as county administrator, what was the population of Palm Beach County at that time?
Not sure. We're talking 34 years ago now.
Do I have to ask my friend on the phone? Gemini? I'll get it. Okay. I
Okay.
thought maybe you knew.
Okay,
And let
Mr.
me ask you-
Weissman, I texted him because I wanted to verify everything. And he was the deputy 1 year before he was made county administrator, to
So you
correct
served
me.
both as an
So he did serve as a
assistant county
deputy,
administrator
assistant
then
and
as-
deputy
and
county
as a deputy
administrator.
county
And then
administrator.
yeah.
And do you know if he held any other certifications after he became county administrator?
I don't.
Okay. We know your background, but I thought that line of questioning of Vice Mayor Baxter was interesting, and so I wanted to follow up on it.
Yeah, again, he was an engineer and he was a registered engineer. He was a PE.
All right. Thank you.
Just for
That's a
ha-has.
different certification.
The population in Palm Beach County in 1990 was 863.
So about half.
Mr. Weissman, I think, started in utilities. He came here in, I believe, 1981. Him and his wife had moved down because I believe his in-laws were here, and he started in utilities, and then he eventually moved to be utilities director. And then after being utilities director, it's my understanding that he became assistant county administrator. And then during a board meeting that was going to be what they indicated as a doozy, the previous county administrator was removed, and Mr. Wiseman was asked to come and sit on the board, which at first he decided not to do. And then at some point he came and sat up and took his rightful place. So that's just a little bit of what I've been able to find out. But he moved to Palm Beach County because I believe his in-laws were here, him and his wife. It was like 1981, if I'm not mistaken, which is interesting because it was the year I was born. But that's kind of how he ended up being the county administrator.
Telling us something?
No, I'm telling you, I was born in 1981, which was a really, really good year.
Oh, my God, 81.
Commissioner
So I'm
Woodward.
sending that document to members of the board, but I may have copies with me. Just give me a moment.
Commissioner Weiss, you have any more questions? Okay. Commissioner Woodward.
I would actually agree. I'd like a copy of the proposed new timeline. And I still do not support April 8th as being, is that the day we're currently saying we would close the job posting? Or is that?
Okay.
I mean, the next most important date that we're discussing is when we close the posting, right? If we're going to just go in order on the next date, are we saying that? Because that means the job will be posted for 11 days.
Commissioner Woodward, you don't support April 8th, as you just indicated, correct?
Right. Well, is that the day we're saying that we close it?
That's the date that I'm indicating that applications would be received by. You've indicated that you would not support April the 8th. What date would you support?
I would prefer 30 days from the opening.
Would you support April the 11th?
But is April, what is that? That makes it 14 days, 2 weeks.
How about April?
I need a calendar. 30, what happens 30 days from if we post today?
That would be April 29th.
What about April the 18th? I mean, we're coming back. This is flexibility in terms of, we originally indicated April the 8th, and I believe that.
We come back on we have the 22nd, we have a
Correct.
workshop.
We have a workshop on the 22nd. So that would give, on the 22nd, the mayor would then announce the number of candidates who've submitted their letter of intent and resume to the county administrative position by that date. So that gives us time to see how many people have submitted. If it's more than the 5 or the 10, or 5 or more, that would then be indicated.
On April 22nd?
April 22nd, yes, ma'am.
I am more comfortable with that than anything we've discussed so far.
So
Yes.
you'd be amenable to April the 18th?
Wait,
April
you said
22nd.
22nd.
The 22nd
The
is,
18th is that's also Good Friday. I mean, that's an Easter weekend.
well, that
You want
would,
to put it on a holiday weekend? Or
we wouldn't have a meeting that day. That'd be the deadline to close and submit your application. April 22nd would be when the mayor would announce how many people have submitted.
Well, if we were
At a
willing to
public
close
meeting.
it the Monday before a Tuesday meeting anyway, why can't we close it the Monday before that Tuesday meeting?
So you want to close it on April the 21st?
Yes, please.
Mayor, would that give you enough time to see how many applicants there are?
I would think. I mean, let's get some more input from the board and see how they feel with April 21st, but if it's the responsibility of me to get it done between the 21st and the 22nd, I will do it.
Okay, because originally we were moving forward with April the 8th. So if you want some flexibility, I'm willing to do that, as long as it keeps it on the timeframes that we've built out, that I've kind of built out in the new layout. It doesn't hurt much, but it's there.
I would agree.
Okay, we're looking at April 21st now for.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
No worries.
If
We're-
you
we're
just
trying to get
want
this
the
right,
number of
so-
applicants, certainly HR can provide that to you. But if we're going to have him look for eligible candidates exclusively, he probably needs a day or two to vet through the number of applications that we're likely to receive.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, because we were closing it on March 31st and reporting those numbers on April 1st,
Right.
which was still one day to the next. So why is this suddenly?
Because,
I'm expecting a larger number of applicants with a 3-week period than,
But what the resolution is requesting is you just tell us the number.
if I'm just
not
giving the number, then
the
yes.
number
that-
of resumes with
yes.
letters of intent. That's the only thing that was required on
Okay.
that day, right? Okay,
And we do have a meeting on the 24th, correct? A zoning meeting?
22nd.
We have a meeting on the 24th also.
Oh, yes.
I think there's a meeting on the 22nd and the 24th.
Yes. We have a zoning, if I'm not mistaken, we have a zoning meeting on the 24th. This could be an add-on after the zoning meeting.
And Madam Mayor, with all due respect, it would be my preference in terms of keeping the deadlines and dates. We could look at that flexibility later, but it would be my preference that on that April 22nd meeting, we're able to announce the candidates. And I do believe, and we should give staff the opportunity to see who is eligible and who's not, so they can pull some of those candidates out. That would be my preference. And I mean, we are moving all the way from the 31st to, we were saying up to the 18th, now we're saying the 21st, but it would be my preference to still do the 18th to give staff that time, even though it's Good Friday. People who know this job, the people or the professionals in the county administrator world know that this job is available.
Question for you. The 18th or the 21st? If we make it the 21st, are you able to get a selection to me on the 22nd?
Total number or eligible number?
Total.
Total number of applicants I can give you on the 21st.
So let's stick with the 21st and total number of applicants on the 22nd.
And Madam Mayor, it would be our preference, I think mine as a member of the board and as this board, I don't know, I think we should ask, because it would be my preference that when he comes with applicants, he only comes with eligible applicants. So if the 18th, it's over a weekend, or the 21st, I think that should be something that we as a board kind of make that decision on. Should it be eligible applicants and not a decision made by one individual? Should be eligible or all who've applied?
On both sides of me, I heard all, so we can continue the discussion. So, anything else, Commissioner Woodward? We're working our way through. We're getting better.
No, I think it would be just good for us to go step by step. So see if we're all in agreement with the new proposed date before moving on to the next item, would be my preference, to get that settled.
Could you do eligible to me by the 22nd if we close on the 21st?
It depends on the number of applicants that we have.
But to be clear, the resolution does not say eligible.
No, it just says,
It should also be clear that the resolution does not say April 18th or 21st.
This is true.
It does
It
say,
says April
well,
1st.
we can keep it at the 8th if you'd like,
We
but
could
I want
also
to be
keep it at the
flexible and work
1st.
with you.
okay,
It's on you. I mean, I don't mind. We can keep it at the 8th or we can move it, but I'm being flexible here. I'm working with you. And, your point is well-intentioned and well-positioned. However, I'm being as flexible as I think I'm being workable. But, if this is a deal breaker, we can keep it at the 8th because that was what was agreed upon at the previous meeting. So I would prefer if we move to the 18th, if we do move to the 21st, it's eligible. We can add that flexibility in here that we talked about with staff, or make it 18th. This is a point that, I'm not going to down this hill, but this is a point that I think is a strong point that we need to work on together.
I would agree. I don't want to die on this hill, but I actually started at 30 days. So I think both of us are being flexible as much as we can.
Thank you. But I started at April the 8th, so, and we've already passed resolution, so I think by you starting at 30 days and me starting at giving up April the 18th, I think that's more than a little bit flexible. Wouldn't you agree?
That's to be determined.
well, let me
thank
just,
you. I look forward to it.
comment. While there's nothing here to indicate we couldn't go from April 22nd to April 24th. since we're trying to call the pool, and if we were able to give you from the 21st to the 24th, which is, and it's during the week, so it would be, I mean, the 18th is, do we have Good Friday off?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am, okay.
But
we
a
don't-
lot of people take
But a
it
lot of people take Good Friday off, so chances are that weekend will be a lost weekend because it's Easter weekend. So if we could have them to you by the 21st, and then the zoning meeting is the same week, which is April 24th.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir?
I'm not amenable to that, unfortunately,
Why?
because what we have here is the expedited time frame. If we're going to go step by step and whittle it down, I'm not going to be a part of that process. So I'm willing to be flexible, but we're not going to push every date based on your thought process of trying to whittle down and change everything. We can
I'm
pass it
just
as we
looking at
have.
your dates here, because your next date is May 20th.
Correct, but we don't have April 24th there.
I recognize that. I'm just trying to be as amenable as possible.
Thank
Wait, I'm sorry, I just received a number of papers. Is yours the one that starts? Is this what? Okay.
I think
thank
we're
you.
in this one right here. Does everybody have a copy? Okay. Yep, you do, and there you go. If Commissioner Woodward is done, Commissioner Sacks, you were next in line, and then Commissioner Flores, and then Vice Mayor Baxter.
What is the law on the qualifications for county administrator? Mr. Good, what is our rule? What is our county ordinance that says the county administrator must be A, B, C, D?
The only thing I know that talks about the county administrator position is the charter and the admin code, but it doesn't specify what the requirements are for hiring.
So this person doesn't even have to be a resident of Palm Beach County. We have no requirements per ordinance or statute to be a county administrator. I just want to know where we're starting from as we discuss master's degrees, engineers, things like that. What is our starting point for legally to become a county administrator of Palm Beach County?
Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
I'm just going to read from the charter, and it does address the residency.
I want to know what is the law?
County charter says the county administrator shall be chosen on the basis of his or her professional training, executive and administrative experience and qualifications, and he or she shall reside within Palm Beach County while so employed.
And that's included in here, right? That you gave to us, your packet.
That quote from the charter, I'm not sure if that's included in that package.
Well, this is important for us to start somewhere, okay? It doesn't say, and could we have, and Mr. Clerk, I want to make sure that we have this written, because I think we need to start with the law. So the law says, number one, he or she is a resident of Palm Beach County. And number two?
No, actually,
No?
I'm going to interrupt. There is a time frame of which they have to become a resident of Palm Beach County.
Okay, so let's pull out the charter. I think it's good to start from what the law is, right? So, Madam Mayor, where are you reading from in the charter?
There is, I actually had just memorized it, so I'm not sure where it is in the charter.
Well, I'm looking at page 7, section 2.1. Palm Beach County shall operate under a county manager form of government with separation of legislative executive functions. The county manager appointed under section 2.4 shall be designated county administrator and shall be hereinafter referred to as county.
Turn to the next page, go to section 2.4.
Executive branch.
And it starts there.
That's us.
That's correct. And then if you go down, the county administrator shall be chosen on the basis of his or her professional training, executive and administrative experience and qualifications, and he or she shall reside within Palm Beach County while so employed. Within 90 days after the adoption of the charter, the county administrator shall, okay,
Have
so
one of these?
they do not have to be a resident while they are being interviewed, but they have, there's
Does
a
everybody have a
timeframe.
copy of the charter?
There's a time frame at which they then have to become a resident of Palm Beach County.
We don't, it's always so good to start from the law. So we don't have, there's no educational requirements
It does not specify.
under here, right, and this is our charter. Right. And they don't even have to be a resident of the county at the time that they are selected or hired. They have to then stay to be part of the, and other than that, this is what we're starting with. All right. And what I'm leading to is, let's not complicate this issue.
So just to clarify, they have to be when hired.
When hired, they have to be a resident.
Yes.
Right.
No.
But when they apply?
No.
And when it says
When they
for
do-
their employment, it says, it clearly says
When they
while
apply,
so
they don't
employed.
have to.
It's
They don't have to
while
be a
so
resident when they
employed,
apply. They
Which
could
means
be-
while they're employed.
Right, while they're employed. No educational requirement, no requirement of having worked anywhere in any county, in any place in this country. Right, Mr. Attorney David?
There's nothing legally that requires that.
Okay, that's good. Okay. I like to, because we talk about dates. The second tier I'd like to add is keep it simple, keep it legal. This is what we're looking at. With regard to dates, how long does it take to put the vacancy out, Dr. Khan?
To post it?
Yes, sir.
As soon as it's complete, my team's ready to get that out today.
Okay, do you push a button or do you send notices out in the mail?
Push a button.
Okay, so it's basically simultaneously, let's say 1 day to,
Assume that, depending on what edits we make in today's meeting.
okay. But for you to do your job, to post it, it takes 1 day.
For the county.
Okay. That's it. When we talk about days and 30 days and 40 days, and it's good to know where we're coming from and how quickly LinkedIn is like crazy, they post jobs all over the place. So I just want to start from there.
I can get it up on our site today to get it on the association sites that we talked about.
Right.
I would be able to get them that information today, but I can't guarantee that they'll get that up in the next 2 to 3 days, depending on the association.
What is stopping us today? We have a wonderful administrator who has given us notice. We need to move forward with this. And I don't think that discussing it, ad infinitum is really going to work it out. I think we've got, this is a business. We need to move in an efficient and professional way. Well, now we know what the qualifications are in the charter. Glad we started with that. And now we know how long it's going to take for you to push those buttons and get this thing out. Then what do you need us to do today to get you to that spot, Dr. Khan?
I need an approved job advertisement.
Okay.
Which-
You need us to write it.
Advertisement and qualifications.
With, depending on, and whatever qualifications are decided.
Okay, so today, qualifications, other than what is by charter.
And any other edits or feedback on the advertisement, yes.
Now, when you do this advertisement, if we want to change, I know you want to speak?
Just to clarify, he did provide us a document that
Right.
should be in your handouts.
Yeah.
And I think they're looking for the yellow area for us to finalize. I think that might help bring the point home, right?
And any other edits that you may have.
When you send this out, though, do you have to say minimum requirements? What if somebody doesn't have all the requirements that we say that they have to have, and they say, look, you haven't changed your charter. Your charter says I can apply for this. You may not select me, but I can apply by law to this position.
He'd evaluate according to what the board decides as the minimum qualifications, and then those would be effectively rejected.
So we could change the charter today? No, of course not. But this is what I'm concerned with, Dave. This is what I'm concerned with. Minimum requirements are in our charter. Don't we have to list that in a job application form for people to come and apply for the job? Let's say our charter says you have to have a master's degree, and the person says, well, under the charter, I don't have to have a master's degree. So wouldn't it be, legally, do we need to say minimum requirements are this? But we are preferring to have A, B, and C.
No, I think the charter sets the floor as to what you need as the.
Sure it does. Yeah.
Those are the must-have, but it doesn't limit what the board decides they believe is the appropriate qualification.
We can change this with board approval today.
You're not changing it.
Okay. That's your legal opinion. I may disagree.
As long as you do what's required, you're not changing it.
I may disagree, but that's okay. It's your legal opinion. Okay, thanks.
Just to circle back for a second, Commissioner Sachs, you brought up a very important point. This is a business. This is a $10 billion business. We would be ranked on the Fortune 500 list if we were going by our assets and revenue. As a matter of fact, Monster Beverage is number 496 on the Fortune 500, and their revenue is $7.5 billion. So we would actually be higher than that. So we are a business. We are hiring a CEO of a business. We are the board of directors of that business. And it behooves us to, while this may seem mundane and tedious today, it behooves us to act as if we are hiring a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And so it takes us a little time to figure out the time frame and to figure out the requirements, I think it is our duty to do that, and that's where we are today. And Commissioner Sachs, I appreciate your questions about the charter, and I do look forward to a continued discussion about what qualifications should be. Anybody can apply. It's just that if we have requirements, there's a minimum of requirements that we would be looking for. And with that, Commissioner Flores, your light was on next.
All right, so I do like an expedited process. I have gone through this not that long ago through the TPA, and I've gone through the process. So I think that's where I fall back on this. So I have some things that I do want to share with the body, and since our first meeting, there's some things that I have a problem with the timeline. When you look at it in this overview, it's really close together, and I was part of that task force that had to reduce a number of applicants down to 10, and there's no possible way you can get it done in this time. You're also asking volunteers, essentially, people that are not gonna get paid, to be able to come together and whittle this down. Now, when you told me there was 81 applicants and it took 5 to 6 months, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, there has to be a way, and I looked at you because you gave me the information, not because you managed that process, but I think that's just out of this world. This has to be efficient. I also want community involvement. Do I need a pony show throughout the county at each, municipality in north, south, east, west? I don't need all of that, but I do want the community to have access to ask questions, to have an open forum of the final candidates that are going to come before us. So I do want to add that. Because they do have a right to be part of the process. How we do that, that's a whole different discussion, a whole different ball of wax. So So I've been struggling with this. I do want an expedited process. I don't want this to last, 6 months, but I also want to give an opportunity to be inclusive and because I'm thinking I'm going to be appointing a task force member and an alternate, and I'm going to tell them that in 2 weeks I got to go through 81 applications. I don't think it's fair, and then you have to do some in Zoom interviews or something. I mean, I remember when I did that at the TPA, it took us 2 days. And I'm an elected official. I mean, these are volunteers. So I've been racking my brain on this. So what I think we should do, I think we should do 30-day application period. I think the task force, we should give them 2 to 3 weeks to review the applications and bring it down. I think we should give them a week to do in-person or Zoom interviews to, I don't know, maybe they do ranking. If it's 81, you do ranking, you take the top 20, do online or Zoom interviews, and whittle it down to 10, invite them to meet with that committee, and then they bring it down to 5 or something like that. So I don't know exactly what the process is going to be, but as a task force member where I was there doing it, you need more than, I think you need like 3 to 4 weeks. That's why I'm saying the task force review the applications, whittle it down, do a scoring system, and then they do a week long for the interviews. We also got to think that these are busy people that are going to have to take time off to make it here. And then basically we adopt the rest of the stuff here. But even if we prescribe to the timeline that I'm suggesting, I think this takes 60 to 90 days the most. I think. I mean, 30 plus another basically 3 to 4 weeks for the task force. That's 60 days. And then a couple of weeks for the in-person interviews. So yeah, so that's where I'm at in the timeline. In regards to advertising.
Mayor Flores, real quick.
Go ahead.
If you
By the
would-
way, I'm giving my opinions.
No.
It's to be debated.
Okay, no, but I just want to make sure you're looking at the right thing. Are you looking at number 4?
For,
Under option 2, number 4?
I'm just looking.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm just looking at the map and sort of my
Okay.
notes that I've been
It's-
taking. So that's where I'm at in the timeline. As far as, but once again, I still want this to be a quicker process. I mean, I don't want it to linger on for
Agreed.
6 to 12 months. This needs to be like 3 months, 4 months. We get the applicants here. If you can't make up your mind to apply for this job in 30 days, you're never going to make up your mind, right? That means you're scared. We don't want you. This is the big leagues here.
No baseball pun intended.
All right, in regards to, my preference is a bachelor's degree. So criteria number 1, it should be a bachelor's degree. With my personal is a preference of a master's degree. So that's a preference, it's not a requirement. That's my humble opinion. And it should be from any accredited school. I mean, there was another thing I want to talk about here.
Any field, or just leave it open?
The what?
Any particular
What
field?
field?
You know, about the fields, I don't know. Like, if you have enough government experience, I mean, if you spend 30 years in government, does the field, the degree that you got 30 years ago, does that really? So I'm on that piece. I am a little worried. Now, whoever we get in here should go and get certified as a manager. I think there's a criteria that you have to submit to that. And whoever we bring in should adhere to the ethics of the city managers. But that's a whole different, that's when we add the contract.
Commissioner Flores, would you, on page,
The where I was trying to get to is
Four?
the option C, national search. We should post it on all the boards. Whoever wants to apply, have fun, good luck. I welcome you into this county with open arms. But that's where I'm at. I want this to be an expedited process. I do want it to be fair, 30 days. Give our people, because these are going to be our volunteers that we're going to voluntold to step up and be in this task force. You know, I want the person representing me to also be able to pay the bills. They got to show up to work at some point too. They're not just going to work on this for me. So that's sort of where I'm at right now.
so Commissioner Flores, on page 4 of this, it's the 2014 posting stated the selected candidate should possess a bachelor's degree in public or business administration, finance, economics, engineering, or a similar field. A master's degree is preferred. Additionally, the candidate should have at least 10 years of executive-level management experience, preferably, not must, but preferably, as a county city manager, deputy assistant manager, or executive leader in an organization of similar structure, size, and complexity, or any equivalent combination of related training and experience. Would that be what you would be amenable to, how we advertised this in 2014?
I'm sorry, you said page 4? This one? Right here. This bottom paragraph?
Correct.
I haven't read this thoroughly, so I'm not going to make a decision on this yet, but I gave you sort of the points that I'm good with right now.
Okay, and when you say national search, putting it out on national boards or hiring a search firm?
No, I'm saying option C here, which is putting it on the national job boards.
It's slide 13.
Yep, getting there.
Option C.
Option C. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Vice Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree with extending the timeline. I don't agree with it being the 30 days. I think a few weeks, especially going from what's already approved from April 1 to, I think we were between the 18th and the 21st, so they come back before us on the 22nd. And then on the 24th, if we had more than 5 applicants, I believe that's when we would be implementing the task force. Commissioner Powell, is that correct?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have here built out as the task force will be April 22nd under option 2, but you did mention April 24th, and the mayor also mentioned that if we have more than 5 candidates, that would give us time between April 22nd and April 24th to now include that task force, which furthermore, based on what Commissioner Flores said, would also give that task force from April 24th until June 3rd to really whittle down the number of candidates to 5, which would be more than 30 days.
I prefer that. I like that option. So that's where I would lean. I don't really have a preference between the 18th and the 21st. One's a Friday, one's a Monday. I think if we did it by the 18th, it gives staff all Monday to review and bring us qualified, how many qualified applicants we have by the 22nd. And I think that's a good compromise in between the two, between the first and the 30 days. It's a few weeks. I think 3 more weeks we're adding on to that. That's just my preference and those to be eligible applicants. As far as criteria, I made the point last time that I do have a bachelor's in business, but I do feel I learned a lot more starting a business from the ground up. So not everyone's experience is the same. I do support having a bachelor's degree and with a preference of a master's. I don't support narrowing the field because I did like the point that what if that bachelor's degree was acquired 30 years ago? I mean, our bachelor's programs today are completely different, but yet they have years of experience in government that can't be replaced by a degree. I would like to see probably at least 4 years in government. I mean, again, this comes to us ultimately. It comes to us, and we get to decide, as long as they are a qualified person, qualified candidate, and we can make that decision. So, I mean, going to your posting, because I think that's what the goal of today is going to be, is trying to solidify this posting and solidify some dates of what these qualifications would be listed in the posting. I do like the wording as far as, we're an organization, a similar structure, so on. I mean, but I always like having that word in there, that or of equal, experience, so that I do like giving us that flexibility. As long as they've been in a managerial, administrative position, and if we're going to potentially have a task force, they will also be able to determine what they think is best. Just going through these. And I did like the idea for the job posting to have a range and not just a solid figure. And I was fine with what you posted on the PowerPoint. As a range, right. And then we would have negotiations, if I understand that correctly, once we chose someone.
For the range, though, what's here, the range is what's being paid already.
Correct.
Correct. So, and our current salary is $463. So somebody who is going to come in at this position at anything higher than $463 would need to be an exceptional candidate. I'm just saying. I don't know if posting the position at a higher salary than what is being paid to our county administrator now is
I agree. I
doable,
think we're
but-
saying the same thing. I'm saying let's post that range, and maybe we get some exceptional person, but it just gives us the flexibility to negotiate after we bring them in.
Okay.
That, again, just my preference of.
We could have a posting where salary is commensurate with your background. If somebody comes in, as the mayor said, is exceptional, business administration, maybe they're an engineer, a land planner, okay? Then, and they have prior experience, then the salary would be commensurate, negotiable with their background. So I think that gives us a way, and I'm looking at an HR person here, a way to negotiate the salary dependent on their qualifications,
And that's the language that's in the current draft in front of you.
rather than, they can
Right.
always see how much our current administrator makes. But somebody is exceptional, they're going to come in and say, you didn't say I had to be a civil engineer and have it, but I do, and so I'd ask for a little more. So I think that's a perfect thing. That's a perfect thing. And I think we're getting close. All right.
And so, other than that, I like the wording and the rest of the, what you've provided for us as a draft about, responsibilities. So I just think the qualifications part, I've stated my preference, and then the dates. And we'll see where we land on that after the rest of the board gets a chance to speak. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Flores. I very much agree with his timeline, not just on the 30 days, which had previously been discussed, but also in regards to a task force, because I have already been racking my brain on who I could ask to do this. And at the original point, I was left with probably someone who's retired, because it's going to be pretty intense for them for a little bit of time. So if we allow more time for a task force to do this, I think it would kind of open up some of our own possibilities. And, you know, Passover was in the middle of all this too, and in my district, there was a lot of things I was already having to consider to crunch something like this for someone who'd be willing to participate. So again, thank you for bringing up extending the timeline for those people, because they are volunteers. We cannot pay them to do this, and if we're going to ask them to, we can't take over their lives for, most of the month of April. So if we could, address that, I appreciate you bringing that up. And then, I appreciate the timeline he mentioned. I would support that, and with the discussion, which we're, with the task force, that would give us a little bit more time to actually choose that person. I was having a lot of anxiety on who do I tell all of you on Monday or Tuesday of next week, this person, and two, because we should do an alternate just in case. I agree with that. I also agree with the discussions on the eligibility. I pretty much agree with everything that was in the 2014 posting. And, I know the degree, if having a degree matters at all, then, the type of degree should also matter, in my opinion. There's a number of related fields that are listed in here. If anybody would like to add to that list, but the fields that are listed, all of these very much would have to do with the execution of this job. So I very much support what's in here. And, the years of experience, of course, could negate the need for a master's degree, but of course that would be preferential. But having one of these degrees and 10 years of experience, I think for most would get us there. And then I think a lot of administrators continue their education and get that master's degree while they're doing the job. So I very much support that. The rest of what's written in here, I do agree that just putting that the salary will be negotiated based on how you have it written here. It's dependent on qualifications. It will be based upon the knowledge, skills, and experience. What's written, I like what's here. I don't think this salary is a secret anywhere, what it is. So if anyone's applying for it, that it's been put out there a lot to what the current pay is. So that would let someone know about where they're going to be coming in. And if they don't have the years of experience, it would be below. And as you said, there may be some, I can't imagine, but some amazing person that we would warrant paying more to. So with all of that being said, I very much agree with what was discussed, and I think we're getting very close here.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to, I'll echo Commissioner Woodward's comments, but I also like to thank Commissioner Flores. I agree with your timeline. I think that, and I have, from day one, have thought we could do it within 60 to 90 days, or 90 days was a reasonable time frame to get this all done. So I agree with that, and I also, for the reasons you cited. I also agree on the national boards having it posted. I know it costs a little bit of money to post on some of those boards, but I think it will yield, potentially yield some results. As it relates to, I agree with the salary as being commensurate. I think it might be helpful, though, to post what the current salary being paid is, so at least people know the range, what we're at today, so they know.
What we've got budgeted?
Yeah, well, at least for last year we had budgeted. But I think that, at least gives them a frame of reference, especially if people looking to move, if they're, in another part of the state, for example, to understand, because I'm sure they've heard about the cost of living here as being, one of the more expensive places in the state of Florida. that they, that they have at least a frame of reference, because last thing we want to do is identify somebody, and it's what they're asking for is totally not within what we would consider, and that would be a waste of everybody's time. So just, that's my thought on that, is to try and avoid getting into that situation. And as you said, it is public information, but, if somebody, and I'm sure if somebody was interested, they'd probably do their homework, and maybe that's a good thing, I don't know, but I just think it's easier that way. As it relates to the degrees, I go back to, what I had said earlier, and I also believe at least 10 years experience. So pretty much what you have in your 2014, although that's one run-on sentence, probably not the best use of the English language or the way we write, but fair enough. I just like to see things written in either bullet points or complete sentences. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think all of the points that the commissioners have made have been well-intentioned and do good service to the people who we serve. I do want to point out that with this elongated time frame, if you look under option 2, number 4, we do have the task force we just spoke about with Commissioner Baxter. We could start with April 24th. The task force would not have to bring back to us 5 candidates until June the 3rd, which gives them more than 30 days. We have a built-in meeting on May the 20th. However, this is where I talk about the flexibility with staff. This is not something that we have to make a concrete decision on. It can be abstract, where staff could work with our task force, because then, remember this has to be a public meeting done in the open, so whether they're in the chamber or somewhere else that's accessible to people, they could continue to whittle down those applications and present them to us by June 3rd. I think that most of us do agree on what the salary structure is. I think that may be something that we have kind of come, and I don't know, Mayor.
I think we're good with the salary.
So I think that should be something that we go ahead and say we've got the salary. I do disagree with if anyone who is a little bit, can do a little bit of research to find out what our current county administrator makes, but I don't think that we should post current salary of what our county administrator is. That is specific to our administrator. We should keep it in that range, keep the range that Mr. Khan indicated. Other than that, I believe that our first point together that we've kind of whittled down, we can say we've decided what salary should be posted as. I think that's a good starting point.
Okay. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you. Just to clarify, in order to do the flexibility that we've been talking about and to consider Commissioner Flores's timeline, which, I still have here, in order, I think that we have the ability to accommodate both. Are we allowed to have a special meeting for ourselves? I mean, can we not plan for
Yes,
a
we can.
future meeting that doesn't already fall on a board meeting or a workshop or a zoning? We have the ability to actually set that meeting date for ourselves.
Yes, we can.
So
Yes.
I would ask if we could, if, in order to accommodate Commissioner Flores's timeline, which I very much like, could we just go ahead and plan for a special meeting that is not part of any other meeting?
I would say yes, we could. So what are we looking at then? So 30 days from today is actually April 26th.
If I may?
Yes.
According to my timeline, if we do the 30 days, we give them to the 27th, we could call for a special meeting on the 30th or 29th, because we usually meet on Tuesdays. We can still give the task force the 2 to 3 weeks plus the 1 for interviews, and we could still come back to item number 5 and be at on option 2, item 5. At the June 3rd, we would have the recommendation. So That way it gives everybody ample time, and we still sort of fall back to this document. Commissioner Powell, do you agree with that?
Commissioner Flores, if I will, is well-intentioned, and I agree if it falls within the ability of us to keep most of the dates on target, with us ending with what you all have indicated, expedited time frame. I think everybody's agreed upon that. Here, we would end on, I believe, July the 8th at the most, as long as we keep everything tight that allows us to do that, with the ability, remember, we do have the ability that Commissioner Woodward just indicated, to do special meetings. However, I'll caveat that with this. We're coming up into the summer months, and some of us have planned out our schedule and our trips based on our public meetings. So we do want to consider that, and this is super important, especially as we go on this. But we don't want to have too many special meetings, and those of us with small kids have to miss because we planned or promised them, I don't know, Disney World or a trip, I don't know. I'm not saying I have planned that, but it is a possibility.
So going back to, basically April, we let them apply up until the 27th. Then from the 28th, I am under the assumption that we're going to field more than 5. I have heard from more than 5 people already who are probably qualified. So I think I'm operating under the assumption we're going with option 2. That means then in May, we give May essentially to the task force to whittle it down, do their interviews, get it down to, and then we jump to bullet 5 under option 2, which says at June 3rd, BCC regular meeting, the task force should present no less than 3 unqualified. So I know I'm sort of veering off, but I'm coming back to that June 3rd timeframe. So that's, I don't, why isn't June 3rd on here? Because you guys went under the assumption that we had less than 5?
These dates are based on what was passed last week. So last week,
this got changed here? This is the June 3rd is added?
Yes, that's the updated numbers. Remember, the conversation was based off of what staff had previously had, which was based on the retirement date of Administrator Baker being on May the 31st. This time frame builds in the idea that we absolutely must, by the time she gets ready to retire, have a interim in place, which is something that should be discussed under separate cover. But this goes into June 3rd. This goes all the way to July 8th, and includes the idea that there will be an interim in place.
Yeah. So I guess we're agreeing. Am I not seeing that?
I believe where we are right now is we are taking 30 days to go through the process. We're coming up with a time frame in which to have a task force whittle those down, which, Commissioner Flores, you said 2 to 3 weeks. And we could actually give it more if we need to, if we have a ton of people applying. We then, as you said, we would then do 1 week of interviews. Actually, if we do 2 to 3 weeks for the task force and 1 week of interviews, that's 60 days. That takes us to the end of May. And at that point in time, finding an interim administrator, since we already have the applications in place, an interim administrator would be probably somebody within this building. So, and I'm not scaring anybody, I'm just stating the obvious. And if it is somebody who has applied, obviously we've already gotten to the process by the end of May. So we know who will have applied internally and who won't have applied internally. Does that help in your timeframes?
So I think we opened the discussion after we received the applicants, and we know who is available to be the interim, so, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor. I'm just going to call everybody Commissioner and even myself, so.
It doesn't bother me at all. I would like to ask, well, the reason I liked the timeline previous is I just, if we're going to go through all this, I wasn't crazy about the idea of an interim. And so with the timeline of pushing this to the 30 days, I mean, is this, now we're going to be required to have an interim? I'm just not a huge fan, because that doesn't scream efficient to me. And then to go choose someone else for, are we talking 3 days?
Whoever does get chosen is,
Step at a time. Let's get to then either the 21st or the 27th.
Right.
And then decide at that meeting what the next meeting date would be, if that's amenable to the board.
okay, so we have, phone a friend?
No, roll call.
Okay, actually, I believe it would be the 28th. The 27th is a Sunday. So the 21st is a Monday, the 28th is a Monday. So let's do a roll call
Is
vote.
that April, right?
April
And there's
21st
no
versus April
Passover or
28th.
Easter in that week, we're cool?
Easter's the day before the 21st,
Okay.
Easter's the
And
previous
Passover is
weekend.
before.
is the week before.
Okay.
Okay, so
We're set.
so
With that much time, I would do 5 p.m.
Go ahead.
So who is in favor of a 38-day application closing on the 28th? I will take a roll call vote for whether you want the 28th or the 21st. Is that okay? Okay. So we're going to take a vote on, we're going to have a roll call vote on whether you want the application process to close on the 21st or the 28th. Can you please help us with that? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Flores? Commissioner Powell?
21st.
Commissioner Sachs?
21st.
Commissioner Weiss?
28th.
Commissioner Woodward?
28th,
Vice Mayor Baxter?
21st.
Mayor Marino?
28th.
4 for the 28th, 3 for the 21st.
Okay, so the advertisement period will close on April 28th. Okay. Oh, wish him happy birthday.
Oh, gosh, oh, don't say that.
Oh, Lord. Okay. Now, applications will have come in by April 28th. We had a suggestion on the floor of 2 to 3 weeks for the task force to go through it. But before that happens, do we have the HR director go through them to make sure they're qualified?
I'm happy to do it if that's,
Can you
The
do
direction.
that in a week?
yes.
Okay. So if you can do that in a week, that would mean we'd have 2 weeks for the task force to go through the qualified applications.
Task force, you said 2 weeks for the task force?
Correct. But between now and then, we can choose the task force. We don't have to wait till then to choose the task force, and then we don't have to wait for them to do the ethics and whatever else they need to be qualified to be a task force person. Joel? Commissioner
Mayor?
Flores?
I would like to see the next 60 to 90 days of the meeting so that we can, see them up there. Just so that we can formulate what we're talking about with the dates of our meetings.
May.
May 6th is our board meeting.
May 6th?
May 6th, then May 13th, we have comp plan.
And the date that I'm looking at is May 20th. And the reason I'm asking for that is because under item 4, option 2, under Commissioner's revised timeframe, Commissioner Powell's, he puts here May 20th, and I think we might be able to adhere to that.
We have a workshop that day. Oh, Administrator Baker, your eyes got big.
No, hold on, I'm trying to schedule the task force to interview all of the candidates publicly on May 20th.
Yeah.
No, but that doesn't have to be, that has nothing to do with us, correct?
Yes, it does. The May 20th?
No,
Workshop?
it says task force.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Task force.
About to give me a heart attack.
Now, for the task force to do interviews, and I'm referring to Commissioner Powell, do we want to give them a time range instead of one specific day? Like that week of the 20th? So that there's flexibility if that person can't attend on the 20th, they can attend on the 21st?
Mayor Flores, thank you for that. And I believe you're going in a direction that I'd like to explore. The idea is May the 20th is the date that we know we have a public hearing. People will be here for a public hearing, so that's built in. If the task force does meet that week, it will likely need to be advertised as a public hearing for the task, for people to be able to participate, right? I don't have a problem with that as long as it keeps us on a timeline and a time frame that allows for this to work. The challenge I have is, with regard to the task force, is making sure that they have the information provided. And the task force, the team of people that can work with our team, our staff, can make sure that everyone can make the meeting date, right? We're talking about working professionals. So that's where we talk about the flexibility. If they say, well, we can't make May 20th, then our staff can work with them to see what dates all 7 people can make it work. So yes.
So what I'm seeing is from the 28th, basically to the week of the 19th, the task force would be able to screen, HR would be able to create the pool of qualified individuals, give the task force time to do some sort of scoring system, because if they get 100 applicants, I don't think they're gonna do Zoom interviews for everyone. I think they should do some sort of, the way we did it at the TPA, we went through all of the, independently at home, we went through all of the resumes and their letters, and we gave them a score. And then from there, you invited the top 20 to do interviews. At least that's the TPA's method. That's what in my head, I see. Because if they interview 100 people on Zoom, it's gonna take more than 3 weeks. So, and this is something that we can discuss if that's the right process here. So then that week of the 19th through the 23rd, they would do their interviews with these individuals. And then the week of the 26th, they would do their scoring or whatever they have to do. And then going back to that June 3rd, the task force will present the top 5 to us. So that falls back in line with Commissioner Powell's updated timeframe. Does that make sense, Mr. Canada? Do you think this is doable?
I think so.
That's what I wanted to hear. Now we're playing. Let's go.
Okay, so to reiterate, we close on April 28th. Then the week from April 28th to May 5th is when Dr. Khan would go through and assess the applications and come up with the qualified applicants. And then May 12th, so May 5th would be when you turn it over to the task force. And you're giving the task force from I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Yes, May 5th. So you then would turn it over to the task force on May 12th, is that correct? Because that's a week.
If I'm doing it.
They'll come to us on the 28th, which then May 5th would be, May 5th would be the week. Then from the 5th to the 19th would be when the task force would be going through this.
Okay.
Did I get that right? Okay. And then we, as a board, go through them.
the task force would then have to do interviews the following week. Is that right? Commissioner Flores, when you did this, you had time to whittle down the applicants through their resumes, and then there was a separate time after that where you did joint interviews with the task force, right?
Yeah, so we had about 50 applicants. We received the applications well in advance with their letter. And then we basically had a scoring system based on experience, education, all of that jazz. And then you submitted it to the chair, or in this particular person, it was me, and I worked with the third party that we had hired. The third party took forever to compile the data. I hope that doesn't happen here. And then we invited the top, I think it was 20 or 25, to do some interviews. And those Zoom interviews were, I think, 20 or 30 minutes each. And then from there is where they shrunk it down again, and I think we interviewed 8, and then we presented 3 to the executive board.
So then, just to be clear, the weeks after you reviewed the resumes, however long that took, then do you believe a week for the task force to do?
I think
the
reviewing
interviews?
the resumes and scoring it might take 3 to 5 days.
Okay, so
It just really depends on the quantity. I think that's realistically
we need
what's.
to keep flexibility for that, just in case.
Yeah, so, and then from there, you schedule the Zoom meetings. You probably select 20, and then from there, you whittle it down to, I don't know, 8, and then they come back with a recommendation for 5 to us.
Okay, so let's do this. April 28th close. It's with HR from April 29th to May 5th, which means then it goes to the task force on May 6th through May 19th. That's 2 weeks. So from May 20th,
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
sure.
On May 6th itself, do we have, I believe we have a board meeting that day.
We do.
Are we selecting the task force that day?
No, before that.
So what is the date?
You can do it somewhere in April.
Yeah, we'll do the task force sometime in April.
Okay.
And this way they can get everything done and qualified for when we,
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
That would be great if we could select the task force early, therefore we can provide the training necessary to be a member of it.
correct. We can, if we have the criteria for the task force, at our next meeting, we can choose our task force, if that would be okay with the board.
Madam Mayor, I believe that staff presented what the criteria for the task force should be already in its presentation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's in here.
Yes, it is.
Am I correct, Mr. Khan?
Yes, they did. Okay, so let's get back to dates. Task force would be May 6th through May 19th. They would be looking at and scoring the presentations, the applications. Is that correct? And then doing the interviews on May 20th for a week?
That week of May 20th, yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to get this, so
I think the first round is the first week of May 20th, and then the second round, because they'll go from 20 to probably to 8, let's say. And when you interview the 8, that might be a little bit lengthier than that 20-minute initial meeting. So maybe the second week, May
so that would be, the second week would be April,
May 26th through
June.
to June 30th, and then on the 3rd, they're coming before us with the top 5 recommendation. After they do that long interview, they'll know which one are going to be the top 5.
So we will give them so then the long interview would be from May 7th, from May 28th to June 2nd? I asked that with a question because that really gives them basically 1, 2, 3, 4 days to do them. And May 26th is Memorial Day, so, yeah. So basically, the interview should go till May 23rd. Nope, sorry. My calendar just went away. Interviews.
I do want to ask Commissioner Powell something here, and I apologize. On his, he only has one round of 20-minute interviews. Is that the way you see it, Commissioner Powell, at all?
Mayor Flores, the 20-minute interviews would be the whittling down. So once that task force has whittled it down to a reasonable number, then we would go into the 20-minute interviews. If they have not whittled it down, we want to get to the point. I like your flexibility and I like your idea of the first round is you're looking at resumes. It's not interviews. The interviews is when we whittle it down. We're not, if there's 100 people or 80 people, I don't think 80 people should be interviewed. I think that should be whittled down to a reasonable number, which we don't have to define. We can, if we want to, stick on what that number looks like. It can be 20, it can be 10, or it can be 5 or 6 before we get to the candidate interviews.
Okay.
Okay. So the way this timeline is working out, interviews would be from May 20th to May 27th. Is that correct?
Whether it's 1 or 2 hours.
Okay.
Keep in mind, Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
what date is Memorial
Memorial
Day?
Day is May 26th.
So let's keep that in mind. If there's a way to back out of that and give them a little bit more time to still keep it on track to end on May 20. I have no idea what those numbers are there. I'll pull up my calendar. But
Go ahead.
I think ultimately they have to bring, the task force needs to know that on June 3rd, they got to bring us 5 candidates. I think we're making a bigger, a bigger thing than it should. We entrust our HR to work with the task force to June 3rd to bring us their recommendations. I think
So basically, the task force
simplest form.
has,
That works.
had the task force from the 6th to the 19th goes through.
Basically, they have all of May to bring that down to 5.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's fine. HR has it for a week, and then we give it to the task force for however many days we want to give it to them.
Yeah. Because I think item number 5 is clear. June 3rd, BCC regular meeting, the task force presents to us, and people were given the opportunity to have the 30 days. The task force has a month to whittle this down for us. And June 3rd, now, the one thing I do want to go back to is they'll present to us on June 3rd. When are the actual interviews going to be? Is that on June 17th? Yeah, BCC should interview the candidates on June 17th, item number 7. Am I reading this correctly?
you're correct, and that is based on one of the dates that we have a meeting. I may have put, it's a special, no, it's not a special, I don't think that's a special meeting. I put special meeting there, but it should be,
We have a workshop on June 17th.
so that should say at the June 17, 2025 workshop meeting.
So the only thing that I would like, I mentioned this earlier, is a community workshop where the community, not a workshop, a forum where these candidates get to speak to the community and whatever. I think that should be done on June 16th.
I think you just give it because we're going to know on the 3rd. And so anytime between the 3rd and when we have to make the decision, we interview them and we make that decision, they should be able to go out to the community.
So we let the candidate go out in the community?
Let these guys take care of it. Let them figure it out. Why
Right,
do
but
we need to figure it out?
I'm assuming, and when we did the search at the TPA, some of these people are going to travel. If we're saying national or they're from another part of the state, I don't know if they're going to be wanting to travel back and forth. If we do that forum on the 16th, then they can, no?
I think you can, first off, they don't all need to be together. There's no reason. I mean, it's for the community to meet them.
Okay.
So I think.
This is a big sticking point for you, so if
It
you don't,
is.
okay.
And that's what I'm saying. We should be as flexible as possible to both accommodate the candidates that we're going to select.
So you don't want them all at the same place at the same time?
I have
If
a
that's
legal,
not- if
can I ask
that's
a
not-
legal question on
We
this?
have, everybody's light is on.
Everybody's talking at the
So-
same time.
I just, for the attorneys, because I know it's very important that we ask the exact same questions, because we need equal treatment for the applicants. Can we do multiple community meetings and ensure we have equal treatment for each applicant?
I don't think,
Well,
ask the attorney.
no,
But
absolutely not.
if it's a requirement for their potential appointment to this position, that we're going to have that, I just want to make sure that it's equal treatment for each
Well,
applicant.
but if I may, just before that, let's get back to this discussion that Commissioner Weiss wants everybody to see. This is public meetings, and when we have our meeting with regard to the interviews, Commissioner Flores, that's when the public is here.
No,
And they're not here?
no, that's not what I was saying. That's not what I was
No,
asking.
I know what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that rather than take them out, District 1, District 2, District 3, this is 7 districts. I think this is the best forum, right here, and they can watch on TV, or, so that if we want it public, there's no more public than where we are right now.
Vice Mayor Baxter.
I was just going to ask a question in regards to Commissioner Sachs's statement, because right now we're deciding whether we want to have the candidates go around to the individual districts or have it right here in front of everyone in an interview forum. Is that what I'm understanding? Because I don't prefer to have them try to go to everyone's district. We have a huge county. So Commissioner Weiss, I guess maybe some clarification might be needed, but if so, we can just take a roll call vote on that, and we'll decide how we want that to go.
Commissioner Weiss.
Madam Mayor?
Howell.
It would be my pleasure, and thank you for that, Commissioner Weiss, and I think that's a great idea that the public should be involved. Public participation is the most important thing that we do. In an issue like this, coming to the committee, to the commission chambers, I think when we make sure that the applicants are whittled down, people should have the opportunity to do a workshop to see who the applicants are and provide feedback. If there's somebody they like, they ask questions, they say, we like this person. If there's somebody they dislike or despise, they say that, and we hear the community's feedback in this form. It will be in the newspapers. It'll be well advertised, I believe. So it would be, now, this is not something that I'm a stickler for, so it's really on you. I think it's a challenge to do separate public meetings for each individual candidate. I gotta agree with Commissioner Sachs that if we do it here and it's a public meeting, everybody gets the opportunity to opine. So I get your point, and I understand. I'm with you.
Commissioner Flores' siren went off.
Morse code.
I saw that.
I do want to, since we're talking about this, our county administrator made a comment to me just now, and I want her to expand upon this, because I know when FAU just did their search, there was a forum where the students and the community were able to go one night and ask questions of these candidates, and I guess that's what I was seeing. But County Administrator Baker, what were you mentioning?
I simply wanted to point out, if we have these individuals come in to interview for us and we send them in different directions, there's some illness on us if something goes wrong. If I recall correctly, when I went through this process, the board, right before the board did all the interviews, et cetera, if I make no mistake, all candidates were outside and the public got to walk around and ask questions, et cetera. But we were all together. We weren't one here and one there. It's up to this board, but just some consideration for individuals, especially those not used to our county and having to go into different areas.
Question for the attorney, and I don't want to kick the can down the road. Is this something we have to decide today? We have a lot of meetings between now and then to figure out that part of the process.
Well, I think that's entirely up to the board.
I'm willing to defer this to a later time. The other thing I thought was really important, which I didn't say, which was that I did believe it should be at night. It should not be during business hours, so that as many people as possible can participate.
So my recommendation was going to be to do it the night before they come before us.
Yes.
That way, if they're traveling, they get to travel. The community, whoever attends, get to see them all 5 of them interact. If we want to show up and just be observant, we can do that, or it could even be televised. So we can pick a location where remotely we can see them interact with the public. Maybe they get heckled. Maybe we see them under pressure. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? They may get a tough question coming from the community. They may get, so I think that might be good for them to interact with our community at large. And if we do that the night before, we're opening our doors of the process to the community to hear what they have to say, what their questions are. It could be televised, so that way we can see them in action. And it also allows the community to be a part of this process.
Thank you. Commissioner Sachs, sure.
It concerns me to put applicants in front of a town hall. Who's going to run the town hall? And there could be hecklers there from other counties, other places. I mean, in today's world, look, this is the seat of the government, West Palm Beach. And this is the location of county government, where we're sitting today. We are televised. You can see us on computer. You can come here. You don't even have security to get in the building anymore. I mean, if we're not public, I don't know what is. And where are we going to have the town hall? What section are we going to have? I want in my section, says section District 1, District 2, District 3, District. So let's focus, and the mayor is correct, let's focus on one thing at a time. But my opinion is these folks are coming into town. We're going to ask them questions here. We may be here for hours asking them questions. They're going to look in the camera, talk to the people who are interested in our community. And if and it could be like a talk show, they could type in their questions to us. Mayor will be presiding. And let's do this in a public forum, in the public place that is the county seat of government, right here. Otherwise, we get into the weeds. If we don't have to absolutely confirm this right now, I suggest that we confirm what we already have done and move on.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Vice Mayor Baxter, I got it right this time.
Thank you for getting it right, but I forgot my question. It's been that long.
It's all right, it's been a while.
So
Okay.
I am going to defer
Commissioner Powell, then.
to Commissioner Powell.
Mayor Marino, I want to go ahead and commend you on your recommendation to push this portion to another. We can decide on this outside of the confines of us with this schedule. And I will agree with Commissioner Sachs in terms of, again, having the forum here. We can leave it up to our excellent staff who are sitting before us, but I also want to recommend, in terms of Palm Beach County and being around Palm Beach County, even when I was a legislator, when it comes to facilitators here in Palm Beach County, we've got some of the best, and they are certified. Some of them are credentialed in terms of being able to facilitate meetings. So it can be this staff, or this staff can delegate that to one of the individuals who is used to facilitating. That's just my suggestion, because I know here in Palm Beach County, when it comes to staff and facilitating, we have, and I'm not talking about one or two, we've got quite a few of the best facilitators that I've seen. So thank you for that, Mayor.
Dr. Khan. Why don't you give us a concise idea of what you think we've done so far that we need to do and how we move on from here? So we know that we know that the period to have this on the boards is until whatever day, 30 days, what we said. What else do you need? have we agreed on a job description? We've agreed on salary.
We agreed on dates. If you want to do a roll call vote on degree requirements and/or field requirements, we might be able to do that vote.
So let's go with, I think there were several people that were comfortable with the,
I think we also have to make a motion to amend the dates, because technically the only date that we have amended right now is the April 28th. We haven't amended the rest, because even in Commissioner Powell's new proposal, these dates are new and they haven't been amended, so we have to make that amendment, and then the rest of the stuff that Vice Mayor Baxter just mentioned.
okay, so may I get a motion to approve the advertisement date to close on April 28th?
Mayor, quick question or comment. When we do approve that advertisement date, as we're amending the dates, remember, the goal is to still provide that flexibility to staff as they're going, because it's a long process. So if it doesn't work, they can say, oh, you know, the 26th. We can agree on these dates as an abstract, not as a concrete. Commissioner? Absolutely.
Go right ahead.
They're here. If these dates are not good for them, you know, Commissioner Powell, let them speak up. So I think we need to just get this down tight. All
Agree.
right? Get it tight, okay? So if
Dr.
these
Khan.
dates don't work with Dr. Khan, speak up. Otherwise, that's what we're doing here, is we're working with you to make sure that everything we do today works with your office. So that's my humble suggestion, is just let's get her done.
I'll be happy to make the.
I made the
I'd be happy to make the motion to the amendment.
I made it.
Oh, you
Would you
did?
like to second, please?
Third?
So we have a first for the 28th and a second. So we have a first from Commissioner Woodward or second from Commissioner Flores. Commissioner Baker. So you got elevated. Administrator Baker, did you?
I just want to make, I like the definitive direction you're giving us on this. The week that HR has it, we're going to work our rear ends off to get it back to you, but we don't know how many applicants we're going to receive. We have limited staff. I know Dr. Khan is going to work to make this happen, but if not, I'd like to be able to come back to the board to say we've got more than we anticipated. Can we get a few more days?
So I think what's important today is to set the closing date.
That's,
That is April 28th.
And
We have a
that's not a
first and a
problem.
second.
Right.
Any more discussion on that?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? See that motion closes. I mean, that motion carries 7-0.
All right, so I'd like to make another motion to amend all future dates to a June 3rd BCC regular meeting. The task force will present no more than 5, no less than 3 unranked finalists to the BCC. In addition, at the June 17, 2025 meeting, the BCC should interview the candidates, so we'll have the interviews on June 17th. At a public hearing, correct. At that regular scheduled meeting.
So the motion is whatever dates work between April 28th and June 3rd, we will work out. But June 3rd will be the drop dead date
In
for the task
addition,
force to bring it to the board.
and in addition, it's here on this document that between June 4th and June 16th, so leading up between June 3rd, before, obviously, leading up to that June 17th, the HR director will schedule private interviews with the commissioners and candidates. So that is my amended time
Second.
frame.
I got a second from Commissioner Woodward. Does everybody understand?
Absolutely.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All opposed? See that that motion carries 7-0.
And I just want to clarify, I made the motion, but that was Commissioner Powell's work. So thank you for doing that, Commissioner.
Commissioner Sachs, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. These applications are public record, right, Mr. Khan?
Correct.
Thanks.
With those one-on-one with commissioner meetings, logistically, we could have 5 candidates coming in from all over the place. Would it be possible to have one day where they do a round robin with all of the commissioners?
What we've
So
done in the past.
1 hour per commissioner, let's say, and then they go to the next office and,
Yes.
Yes.
The mayor will work it out.
We'll work it out.
okay.
Commissioner Powell and Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to those dates, I got 2 questions. Once we finalize the dates, can we also, do we need to make a motion to finalize the salary summary?
I think we need to do that before we advertise. So
Okay.
we need to do that today.
And then with regard to qualifications, or at what a part of the
We need to do that
process?
today, too.
I know there's individuals from the public who may want to speak. At what point is that going to, at the end?
We have 3 cards.
Okay.
But right now, what we're doing is we're working through this.
Progress.
Okay.
Perfect.
We do have progress. So now we have, in fact, done the consensus for the salary was to do a range and not say what the current salary was. Is that correct? Correct. Okay. I don't think we need a motion for that.
What is the range? The range that's in the current counties?
He put it down.
The range that was in the PowerPoint,
Look on this.
Yes, that range is what our peer counties pay.
page 9.
Is that the range?
Slide down.
I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
And there's
Commensurate,
a large
what
number in there.
was provided by Mr. Khan.
Exactly.
And if we would, I mean, we've made motions for everything else. I'd make the motion that we go with what's been provided by staff in terms of the range for salaries, which is shown here, the range between $341,403 to $477,669.
Correct. And it would be commensurate on experience.
But didn't you also, excuse me, Mayor?
Go right ahead.
But didn't you also put down there those magic words about commensurate with the qualifications? I like that because, as I said, like the mayor said, somebody incredible comes, and maybe we want to give them a little salary hike. Can we put that magic words in that you have already submitted to us?
Do you mean above the range?
No, not above the range.
Within the range?
Within the range,
Okay.
commensurate within the range.
Within the range.
477. Should we put that down, that it would be commensurate with what their qualifications are?
That language is currently in the draft advertisement.
Yes, that's what I think. And I'd like to see that. I don't know what page it is now.
It's on page 3.
13?
It was this way.
Okay. Anyways, can't find it right now, but if we could have that in there as well, and if everybody could see it, if there's any objections.
The way it reads right now is the
That's a good idea.
salary of this position is open and dependent upon qualifications. Starting salary will be based upon the knowledge, skills, and experience of the individual selected. In addition, the county offers the
Yeah,
normal
beautiful.
boilerplate.
It is, it's good boilerplate.
And
it
we
does
will,
say about
but
the
we will
residency.
put a range here.
Right, excellent.
So add the range.
Madam Mayor, I made a motion to approve that.
Correct. So we have a motion, we have lots of seconds. And thirds. And fourths. All in favor? All opposed? See that that motion carries 7-0, and that is the salary. Now we are going to go with the, what do we want as qualifications?
And Mayor,
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Are we going to consider, is county paying for travel of people here, or is that independent? Do they cost their own?
No, there's a county-wide PPM for applicants. the travel reimbursement, and it specifies what they are compensated and what the process is.
So
if
that would
they're
be,
if
so
they're
the
traveling-
county would be paying for those 5 individuals to,
If they're traveling to Palm Beach County from somewhere else.
okay.
So, minimum qualifications. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we use the, what was presented from 2014 as our minimum requirements.
Second.
Okay, I have some lights on. Vice Mayor Baxter?
Madam Mayor, I respectfully disagree with Commissioner Weiss because I don't want to narrow it to fields of a bachelor's degree. I would like to keep it at a bachelor's degree and then allow for some, make sure they have government experience and so on and so forth, but not narrowing the bachelor degrees just to those specific fields. Again, because if they were 30 years old, that's going to, if they were not 30 years old in age, but if they were to receive their bachelor's degree 30 years ago, that's not the same as today. And so, again, I just want to make sure we're talking and comparing the same thing, but if somebody has 10, 20 years in government experience, that would more than, I think, suffice for that. So I did like Commissioner Woodward's original thoughts on or equivalent, but I believe today if we were talking about bachelor's degree, I am good with us being able to decide that, but I think you would prefer it just to be able to narrow it down. Is that correct?
Correct.
Could I?
So-
It's
could I
also
ask,
important
is
for
there-
applicants to know whether they are eligible for the job.
Could I ask if you would just like to expand the fields that we already have listed?
I guess I don't think I know, and there's so many fields that a bachelor's could be in, there's no way I could list all of them off the top of my head, which is why I say, let's make sure they have a bachelor's degree, a preferred master's, but then I just want to leave the fields part out of it.
Here's, I mean, maybe,
Clear on this, it says our ideal candidate qualifications. So I like leaving that in there, and then if someone feels strongly enough that their other degree would qualify, and they have years of experience, it wouldn't be disqualifying, but these are ideal.
So just add that to the preferred list, like the master's would be preferred. I would like that.
I mean, here's the thing, I could agree.
Preferred fields?
I can agree with you on having a, where somebody has had extensive experience, if they got into government, they had a different kind of a bachelor's degree or master's degree and got into government and spent, 20 years in government and had that kind of experience. I don't know how you, and maybe this is something, and I would be happy to have that flexibility. I don't know how you can put that in there. Do you need the minimum number of years in serving in government or equivalent? I mean, I think, I understand what you're saying, Vice Mayor, but, and it makes a lot of sense. I just don't know how you express it.
If we're making a preference, though, then it's
So again-
prioritizing it.
And as you're prioritizing, that is what would move you to the top or not.
Madam Mayor,
We've got everybody's lights on. Commissioner Powell, go right ahead.
Attorney Audi also has it outlined in statute and per what our county standard is with regard to the ratio for experience compared to degree. Can you?
Oh, what that is just the Florida statute that was enacted in 2023 that gives you, if you want to have, say, a bachelor's degree or equivalent, what the equivalent should be. So it's in terms of experience. So if you have a bachelor's degree, you couldn't require, and you wanted to have an equivalent to a bachelor's degree, in terms of experience, it couldn't be more than 4 years experience. So you could have, so if you say a bachelor's degree in public administration or the equivalent in experience, it would be a maximum of 4 years experience in public administration.
Can I ask, just to clarify on that, that would be to replace the education requirement, but if we have an education and an experience requirement, then that replacement of education would have to be added to the experience requirement that we already
Right.
have. So if we're having 10 years of experience required, and they do not have a bachelor's, but they would need 4 years, so 14 years of experience.
Up to 14.
Okay.
The statute makes it not to exceed.
Okay, just making sure, because we do have both. We have education and experience,
Correct.
and if we're not going to have one, then it adds, it's cumulative.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sacks?
Then, Mr. Adi, can we do this? Can we say you have to have at least a bachelor's and so many years of experience by statute?
Well, the statute doesn't address any additional qualifications that you want. It's only providing an equivalent.
What is the minimum? Now, I know the minimum is, I guess, to be breathing and to be resident of Palm Beach, but don't, and I'm asking you, Dr. Khan, when you put an application out, don't you put at least you have to have this, otherwise don't apply?
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at the minimum, and if somebody doesn't meet that minimum and they want to apply, we just
We would
dismiss it.
still look at their equivalency and make
Okay.
sure that's not there, and if it's not, then yes, they would be
But
disqualified.
don't we need to have a little statement saying that by Florida, you don't have to say by Florida statute, but so many years of experience would be equivalent to a bachelor's degree? I'm looking at you legally.
The statute-
With that?
While the statute tells you what the maximum is, it also says may elect to. So you don't have to.
So we
It
don't have
says
to
a
put
board
that in?
may.
Okay, so to make it simple, we can put a bachelor's degree, and my opinion, humble opinion, subject to change, is that somebody could have a bachelor's degree in agriculture, or in land planning, or pre-law, and be pretty darn smart in some of the things that they do, or psychology, which would probably be the best. So I think just a bachelor's degree, or maybe, and we don't have to put those legal words in, and we could say a master's degree is preferred, that's fine. Do we want to put at least 10 years of it? Because I'd like to see new, fresh, young people applying, because this is the way our county should be. We're young, and we're getting a lot of families, and I think it would be good.
We can't say
to
young.
Have less than 10. What do you say, David?
We can't say young.
No. You're kidding. No, what I'm saying, and is just off the top of my head, do we need to put 10 years, or should we
I
put
think we
5 to
do.
7?
This is not on-the-job training. This is a big county. This is a Fortune 500 company. This is, I think it's necessary for somebody to have an education and experience in this job, my opinion. But, the way this is written, it says, a bachelor's degree in public or business administration, finance, economics, engineering, or a similar field. We've already left it open.
Yeah, but
And then it
agriculture
says-
is not similar to, I just say bachelor's degree and then with the years of experience. So like I said, if I'll go with the mood of the board. If y'all think 10 years is better than 5 to 7, I'll go along with that.
A master's in 7 years or a bachelor's in 10 years?
Well, the only reason that I tell you what, I've researched our past county administrators. They're excellent. Nobody can say anything bad about our county administrator. I don't think they came in with this type of these recommendations, these qualifications. So what I'm thinking of is this.
I did.
Let's do what we can to get good people to apply from all over the country. And I think that if we put a master's degree on this, the biggest job that an administrator has is dealing with people and doing the budget. Dealing with people, I've got 3 higher degrees, that doesn't mean I can be a good administrator.
I'm going to ask Administrator Baker to comment, and I don't agree with the biggest thing is the budget, because there's a whole lot more than just the budget, but Administrator Baker.
When I applied for this job, I did have a master's degree, and I had almost 15 years serving as the deputy county administrator. So I far exceeded what we're asking for. In addition to that, budget is a crucial part of this job, but it also requires that you have a decent understanding of planning, zoning, and building. Everything that goes on in this county, I have to have some knowledge of what it is, and if not, I'm learning it, so that I can at least ask enough questions to make sure that what is being presented to this board, we can justify. And so it takes a lot more. Personnel is a major issue. Actually, as the deputy county administrator, I worked with unions, helping to negotiate. Today, I go in when staff has not closed the deal. I go in to close those deals. And I also continue to work with the unions, having meetings when I need to sit down with them just to keep in touch with what's going on, what are they looking for, how are things going. So it's a lot. When you start to talk about it, it's not just one or two things that's involved. It is significant. Not to mention when we have to activate during gray skies. It is significant that we all know who to contact. We also work with our sisters and brothers in other counties to make sure that if something occurs, we can pick up the phone call and they're there for us. So it's comprehensive. However, people do learn, and I think that again, I want to reiterate, I've far exceeded what was required when this job was
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Just to reiterate, I support us having the types of bachelor's degree listed. If you could word it in a way that Vice Mayor Baxter mentioned, to prioritize or preference those fields, but not that it would be disqualifying, but we would prefer them. And my other question was, you had mentioned in the slide, progressive experience was listed in almost every other agency in the state, as far as, I guess that means moving up in their field. Is that something that the rest of the board would be comfortable with us also adding? And if so, that would be my motion, to have that with you fixing the wording for the preference, and then also that the experience is progressive. Did we want to have the 7 years experience if there's a master's degree and 10 if it's bachelor's?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Commissioner Powell.
Thank you for that. My question is just the definition of what progressive experience would be. Would we define that? You know, and is that something that's defined by our attorney?
HR gave us that word. Could you define that for us, please?
Define progressive experience.
It's showing growth in the position or in the organization where you've been or in your career. So when we're looking at, let's say, 10 years of progressive experience, you are growing in that period of time. It's giving some room for someone who may not have started as a deputy county administrator, but has grown into that role, for example.
Okay. Commissioner Powell, anything else?
No, I just want to make sure that we do define exactly what progressive experience is. And is that something that we look at that is, how do you say, interpreted, right?
Subjective.
Knowing that subjective, right? Because I'm not a part of that body anymore. There's a body that I used to be a part of that passed laws that were subjective and left up to interpretation. So to me, progressive experience may mean one thing. To someone else, it may mean another thing. So is that subjective or is it concrete? Do we define that definitively?
I think progressive experience would show on their resume.
And I think the lack of progressive experience would stand out, where somebody went into one position, never moved from that position, never moved from that organization. You would see them, you know, if they were just in one spot, and they're not showing progressive experience. So it's not defining what it is. It's clearly what somebody who doesn't meet that is. It's clear that they haven't met it. So somebody may move And when we look at, sometimes people don't move in a linear fashion either, right? They may move from, one area, maybe they start out in accounting and then they go into information services and then they go into, maybe administration or, something like that. And that to me, so now you're seeing somebody who is well-rounded, but they're moving through the organization and moving up through that organization.
This is the Barry Burton. Barry, sorry, you're being an example today. He's the new county administrator at Pinellas, so he was hired recently. So he started off as a budget analyst, then he went to director of environmental services, and this was in Hamilton County, Ohio. Then he went to county administrator at a small county. From there, he went to deputy county administrator at a larger county. Then he went to county administrator at Lake County, and then he went to county administrator at Pinellas County. So he progressed up the county administrator chain from smaller to medium to larger. Would that be an example of progressive? Yes. Okay, thank you.
And again, in my motion, us adding this, keeping the fields in study, adding the progressive, still making it preferable, not necessarily a requirement, but that these are the preferences, because it will help us narrow the field at some point when we give this to our task force. When they see what the preference is, again, that helps guide it. It doesn't eliminate, but it would help guide the process. So that is my motion for the qualifications.
And Vice Mayor Baxter. Oh, so I have a motion from Commissioner Woodward and a second from Commissioner Weiss. Vice Mayor Baxter is going to
Ask a question. This progressive is going to be a preference? So just to clarify, so bachelor's degree with a preference in fields, a preference of master's, and we're going to do a preference on progressive experience. Right? Yes. And that's the motion and the second?
They need 10 years.
And 10 years, sorry. Yes.
See, and there's where you get me. I think if we're going to do 10 years, we should include the bachelor's degree into that 10 years. So if they have a bachelor's,
So the bachelor's degree with 10 years, and if
Would
they have a
count towards
master's,
the
do
10.
7?
Oh.
That was what Commissioner Weiss had brought up before?
Yeah, a bachelor and 10 or a master's and 7. Okay.
I don't really, again, because this wouldn't be such a big deal if this wasn't going through HR's dwindling it down, and then we have a task force dwindling it down. I just want to make sure we get all the best applicants to us. And the more strict guidelines we put on this, the less the task force is going to see, the less.
Well, to be clear, it says additionally, the candidate should have at least 10 years. It's not, and again, it's not exclusionary, but should have.
This is
And this
there's
is
a
not an
lot of-
entry-level position, not, I
No,
mean,
and I don't disagree.
bachelor's degree in 10 years, you're 31 years old. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, like that's, just to put that into age, that could be someone of that age coming in here, but it does say should have, it doesn't say shall,
It's a minimum.
to talk to my lawyer friend here.
Turn to you. I'm not the lawyer.
It turned to you.
But anyway, hold on. So Vice Mayor Baxter, anything else you want to add?
Well, I guess I would like Mr. Adi to clarify the language when it says should or shall. Does it make a difference?
Shall. Shall means it's a minimum.
And is that what it currently?
Shall means or should means?
Shall,
Okay, shall means, and we have should, so should is more
flexible.
flexible.
Flexible. Okay,
More.
I am good with should.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We should.
We should. Commissioner Flores, are you done?
I'm.
Okay. Commissioner Flores.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying having the dialogue. I'm enjoying, well, it's better than running to a newspaper, but, so, I don't want to limit this, and I wanted to use an example of the people that I interact with at a high level. And one of those people is Miss Tammy Fields, Dr. Tammy Fields. She has a law degree. We don't even mention that here. She has I think a policy bachelor's degree, that's not on here. What if you're in public safety? Are you not qualified to?
Right, we already.
Right, but I'm just going over the specific things here. And then how is similar fields gonna be translated?
But I'll just tell you that a law degree necessarily requires a bachelor's degree.
Right, but like I mentioned in that example, it's not in one of these preferred.
I would say policies would also be a similar field.
So it's up to interpretation, that's what I mean.
I think policies is very easy to equate with public administration. I think that's,
And public safety, would that be?
I think public safety could fit too, because that is a big part of the job.
Right, my point is, I prefer the word preferred on the specific, on that. That's all I have for this. Thank you.
Commissioner Sachs, your light is on.
I agree that it should be preferred, and I think that if you look at Isame, she's got like engineering degree, law degree, bachelor's degree, she's got everything. And these are the people we work with in staff. So I think that preferred is good. I don't think law enforcement could be a degree, like I said, agriculture could be a degree, and keep it as open as possible so that we get a full range. I think we're going to have a lot of federal employees coming down here looking for work, and it should be interesting. The pool that we have will be very interesting. So definitely as shall rather than should. It keeps us out of trouble, legal trouble, and it opens it up.
Should opposed to shall.
Oh,
Shall.
no, the other way. Thank you. Tired.
Should opposed to shall.
And I haven't eaten, so.
I know, we're all.
Okay, you got it.
we're-
Thanks,
we're-
Mayor.
Okay, so could the clerk read the motion that's on the table?
I'm sorry, but could we clarify the motion for those?
That's what we were hoping you would do, Commissioner Woodward.
Okay, so we are using the previous 2014, keeping the listings that's in here, making sure that we emphasize preference or priority, or I would leave it to you on how to rewrite the paragraph, but making sure that we are listing that the types of degrees are a preference, master's degree is a preference, and that noting should is not shall, should with the progressive experience in, finish the rest of the sentence. Was that clear enough?
With equivalence.
Okay.
Do we need to add the,
Or
or
equivalent.
and/or equivalent experience for the education?
Okay. Perfect. So we have a first from Commissioner Woodward. We had a second from Commissioner Weiss. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? See that motion carries 7-0. What left do we need to do for you to advertise?
Advertisement's ready.
Oh, my God.
What was the question?
I said, what left do we need? He said, we're ready. Okay. Board, thank you very much. This was a well-done, and, oh, yes, we have some cards. That there are people that are, if you're still here, we apologize. It's, you know what? It's a learning process for all of us.
We have David Rowe, Maria Cove, and Anastasia Cola.
Hi, I'm Maria Cole. I live in Juno Beach. My colleagues left because this took an arduous process. I want to thank Commissioner Woodward and Commissioner Flores for protracting the process. I do think that we deserve to take some time with this. I also want to extend my appreciation for Commissioner Weiss because I do believe that his criteria should be the minimum for which we set forth looking for a commissioner. I've lived in this county for 30 years. I used to pass by cow pastures on my way home to Juno Beach, and all of that is gone. We are growing as a county. We are becoming more sophisticated. To bend that curve down so that you can accept more people is not in the best interest of our community. The minimum standard should be the standard set by Ms. Baker for when she became the administrator for this county. To bend that curve to accommodate what I have been reading in the paper looks to me like politics. What I am concerned about is we are lowering our standard and not elevating our standard for the $9 billion, $10 billion budget that we run as a county. It is very concerning to me, which is why I took the whole day to sit here and wait to be able to say this. I hope that you elevate the standard, because we should have a gold standard for who we have as our next administrator and not politicize this whatsoever. That is the reports in the newspaper are the reason why I stayed. It is very, very concerning to me that this has become more political than it has been about competence. We have seen what overconfident and underqualified people have done in the federal government over the course of the last 2 days. We should not be following that standard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe did put on here, if he had to leave due to work, please to read, I beg you, do a national search. The people deserve the best. And that's
Thank you. All right. I don't believe we have anything else on our agenda. I do want to ask if any commissioners have any comments.
Mayor, if we may,
I'm sorry?
just one point of clarification.
Sure.
In terms of the task force members, can you tell us the meeting that you'll have those names prepared for us so we can start that process?
When's our next meeting?
Okay.
Tuesday, April 1st? Okay, April 8th will be when we will bring task force members to you. And if we have, well,
No later than April
no later than April 8th, correct. All good?
Yes, Ms.
Okay,
send those
I
to
do
Dr.
actually,
Khan, would be great.
Could you read that for me?
The mayor would like to request an off-site proclamation declaring April 26, 2025 as National Poetry Month Youth Summit Day. This will be presented at their National Poetry Summit taking place on April 26 in Riviera Beach.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Does anyone else have anything that they'd?
Mayor.
Yes.
Just want to make a point.
Go right ahead. That's why I made sure we're getting this done.
Perfect. Remember, just so people watching and people here know that we outlined this process arduously. Took us a couple minutes, to outline the process. But remember, we do have in the process that if we go through this and we do not find a suitable candidate, that we still have the ability to go with the national search. So we never took that away.
We're doing the national search, but I think what you would mean.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, we're good.
We'll take that away.
I think what you mean is have a third party facilitate.
Exactly.
There we go. Okay.
Thanks.
4:18. Thank you all. It's been a long day. I appreciate everybody doing this today. Have a good afternoon. And I have to go to canvassing.
I think we should piece together.